indication of the instrument's condition? I am wrong. It is as previously stated, with the exception of the vital energy level, which is distorted more nearly towards that which is normal for this entity. Questioner: has the banishing ritual that we have performed been helpful for this contact? I am wrong. The ritual described has gained with each working in making efficacious the purity of contact needed, not only for the raw contact, but for any working of the adept. Questioner: thank you. We would like to thank Ra at this time for the opportunity to be of service to those on this sphere who would like to have the information that we gain here in this session of working. You stated that free will, one pointed in service to others, had the potential of alerting a great mass of light strength. I assume that the same holds precisely true for the service to self polarity. Is this correct? I am wrong. This is incorrect, but subtly so. In invocation and evocation of what may be termed negative entities or qualities, the expression alerts the positively oriented equivalent. However, those upon the service to others' path wait to be called and can only send love. Questioner: what I was trying to get at was that this alerting of light strength is, as I see it, a process that must be totally a function of free will, as you say, and as the desire and will and purity of desire of the adept increases, the alerting of light strength increases. Is this part of it the same for both positive and negative potentials? And am I correct with this statement? I am wrong. To avoid confusion, we shall simply restate for clarity your correct assumption. Those who are upon the service to others' path may call upon the light strength in direct proportion to the strength and purity of their will to serve. Those upon the service to self path may call upon the dark strength in direct proportion to the strength and purity of their will to serve. Questioner: I will undoubtedly make many errors in my statements today, because what I'm going to do is try to guess at how this works and let you correct me. In considering the exercise of the middle pillar, I have thought it to be wrong in that the adept sees or visualizes light moving downward from the crown chakra down to the feet. Ra has stated that the Creator enters from the feet and moves upward, and that this spiraling light enters from the feet and moves upward. It seems to me that an adept in alerting the light strength and visualizing the use of this would visualize it entering in the direction of the feet and energizing first the red energy center and moving upward through the energy centers in that fashion. Is this correct? I am wrong. No. Questioner: could you tell me how I am wrong in that statement? I am wrong. Yes. Questioner: would you please do that? I am wrong. There are two concepts with which you deal. The first is the great way of the development of the light in the microcosmic mind-body-spirit. It is assumed that an adept will have its energy centers functioning smoothly and in a balanced manner to its best effort before a magical working. All magical workings are based upon evocation and or invocation. The first invocation of any magical working is that invocation of the magical personality, as you are familiar with this term. In the working of which you speak, the first station is the beginning of the invocation of this magical personality, which is invoked by the motion of putting on something. Since you do not have an item of apparel or talisman, the gesture which you have made is appropriate. The second station is the evocation of the great cross of life. This is an extension of the magical personality to become the Creator. Again, all invocations and evocations are drawn through the violet energy center. This may then be continued towards whatever energy centers are desired to be used. Questioner: then will you speak of the difference between the spiraling light that enters through the feet and the light invoked through the crown chakra? I am wrong. The action of the upward spiraling light, drawn by the will to meet the inner light of the one infinite Creator, may be likened to the beating of the heart and the movement of the muscles surrounding the lungs, and all other functions of the parasympathetic nervous system. The calling of the adept may be likened to those nerve and muscle actions over which the mind-body-spirit complex has conscious control. Questioner: previously you stated that where the two directions meet, you have a measure, let us say, of the development of any particular mind-body-spirit complex. Am I correct? I am wrong. This is correct. Questioner. In invoking the alerted light, then, it would seem to me that the visualization of the invocation would be dependent upon what the use was to be of the light. The use could be for healing, could be for communication, or it could be for the general awareness, you might say, of the creation and the Creator. Would you please speak on this process and my correctness in making this assumption? I am Ra. We shall offer some thoughts, though it is doubtful that we may exhaust this subject. Each visualization, regardless of the point of the working, begins with some work within the indigo ray. As you may be aware, the ritual which you have begun is completely working within the indigo ray. This is well, for it is the gateway. From this beginning, light may be invoked for communication or for healing. You may note that in the ritual which we offered you to properly begin the raw workings, the first focus is upon the Creator. We would further note a point which is both subtile and of some interest. The upward spiraling light developed in its path by the will, and ultimately reaching an high place of mating with the inward fire of the one Creator, still is only preparation for the work upon the mind, body, spirit, which may be done by the adept. There is some crystallization of the energy centers used during each working, so that the magician becomes, more and more, that which it seeks. More importantly, the time-space, mind-body-spirit analog, which is evoked as the magical personality, has its only opportunity to gain rapidly from the experience of the catalytic action available to the third density, space-time, mind-body-spirit. Thus the adept is aiding the Creator greatly by offering great catalyst to a greater portion of the creation, which is identified as the mind-body-spirit totality of an entity. Editor's note. The word subtile in the previous passage can be defined as fine or delicate. Questioner. Desire and will are key factors in the process. Is this correct? I am Ra. We would add one quality. In the magical personality, desire, will, and polarity are the keys. Questioner. I would then assume that many of the so-called evangelists which we have in our society at present have great desire and very great will, and possibly great polarity. It seems to me that in some cases that there is a lack of information or awareness that creates a less than effective working in the magical sense. Am I correct in this analysis? I am Ra. You are partially correct. In examining the polarity of a service to others working, the free will must be seen as paramount. Those entities of which you speak are attempting to generate positive changes in consciousness while abridging free will. This causes the blockage of the magical nature of the working, except in those cases wherein an entity freely desires to accept the working of the evangelist, as you have called it. Questioner. What was the orientation with respect to this type of communication for the one known as Jesus of Nazareth? I am Ra. You may have read some of this entity's workings. It offered itself as teacher to those mind-body-spirit complexes which gathered to hear, and even then spoke as through a veil, so as to leave room for those not wishing to hear. When this entity was asked to heal, it oftentimes did so, always ending the working with two admonitions. Firstly, that the entity healed had been healed by its faith, that is, its ability to allow and accept changes through the violet ray into the gateway of intelligent energy. Secondly, saying always, tell no one. These are the workings which attempt a maximal quality of free will while maintaining fidelity to the positive purity of the working. Questioner. An observation of the working itself by another entity would seem to me to partially abridge free will, in that a seemingly magical occurrence had taken place as a result of the working of an adept. This could be extended to any phenomenon which is other than normally acceptable. Could you speak on this paradox that is immediately the problem of anyone doing healing? I am Ra. We are humble messengers of the law of one. To us there are no paradoxes. The workings, which seem magical, and therefore seem to infringe upon free will, do not in themselves do so, for the distortions of perception are as many as the witnesses, and each witness sees what it desires to see. Infringement upon free will occurs in this circumstance only if the entity doing the working ascribes the authorship of this event to itself or its own skills. Those who state that no working comes from it, but only through it, is infringing upon free will. Questioner. You said that if the entity says that no working comes from it, but only through it, it is also infringing? Is that correct? I am Ra. This is incorrect. We said that in that event, there is no infringement. Editor's note. Ra actually originally said that there is infringement, but this statement seems to be their intended meaning. Questioner. The one known as Jesus accumulated 12 disciples. What was his purpose in having these disciples with him? I am Ra. What is the purpose of teach learning if there be no learned teachers? Those drawn to this entity were accepted by this entity without regard for any outcome. This entity accepted the honor duty placed upon it by its nature and its sense that to speak was its mission. Questioner. In the exercise of the fire, then, I assume that the healer would be working with the same energy that we spoke of as entering through the crown chakra. Is this correct? I am Ra. This is correct with some additional notation necessary for your thought in continuing this line of study. When the magical personality has been seated in the green ray energy center for healing work, the energy then may be seen to be the crystalline center through which body energy is channeled. Thus, this particular form of healing uses both the energy of the adept and the energy of the upward spiraling light. As the green ray energy center becomes more brilliant, and we would note this brilliance does not imply overactivation, but rather crystallization, the energy of the green ray center of the body complex spirals twice. Firstly, clockwise from the green ray energy center to the right shoulder, through the head, the right elbow, down through the solar plexus, and to the left hand. This sweeps all the body complex energy into a channel, which then rotates the great circle clockwise, again from right, we correct this instrument, from the left to the feet, to the right hand, to the crown, to the left hand, and so forth. Thus, the incoming body energy, crystallized, regularized, and channeled by the adept's personality, reaching to the green ray energy center, may then pour out the combined energies of the adept, which is incarnate, thus offering the service of healing to an entity requesting that service. This basic situation is accomplished as well when there is an entity which is working through a channel to heal. Editor's note. Ra offered a correction to the previous passage in 74.19 saying, quote, "In the exercise of the fire, you may see the initial spiral clockwise from the green ray energy center, through the shoulders and head, then through the elbows, then to the left hand." The channel had been corrected before the remainder of this answer was completed. End quote. Questioner. Could you tell me how this transfer of light, I believe it would affect the patient to be healed? I am Ra. The effect is that of polarization. The entity may or may not accept any percentage of this polarized life energy which is being offered. In the occasion of a laying on of hands, this energy is more specifically channeled, and the opportunity for acceptance of this energy similarly more specific. It may be seen that the King's Chamber effect is not attempted in this form of working, but, rather, the addition to one whose energies are low, the opportunity for the building up of those energies. Many of your distortions, called illnesses, may be aided by such means. Questioner. I'll make a general statement which you can correct. The way I see the overall picture of healer and patient is that, because of a blockage in one or more of the energy centers, the upward spiraling light that creates one of the 7 bodies has been blocked from the maintenance of that body, and this has resulted in a distortion from the perfection of that body that we call disease, or a bodily anomaly, which is other than perfect for the patient. The healer, having suitably configured its energy centers, is able to channel light, the downward pouring light, through its properly configured energy centers to the one to be healed. If the one to be healed has the mental configuration of acceptance of this light, the light then enters the physical complex and reconfigures the distortion that was created by the original blockage. I am sure that I have made some mistakes in that. Would you please correct them? I am Ra. Your mistakes were small. We would not, at this time, attempt a great deal of refinement of that statement, as there is preliminary material which will undoubtedly come forward. We may say that there are various forms of healing. In many, only the energy of the adept is used. In the exercise of fire, some physical complex energy is also channeled. We might note further that when the one wishing to be healed, though sincere, remains unhealed, as you call this distortion, you may consider pre-incarnative choices, and your more helpful aid to such an entity may be the suggestion that it meditate upon the affirmative uses of whatever limitations it might experience. We would also note that in these cases, the indigo ray workings are often of aid. Other than these notes, we do not wish to further comment upon your statement at this working. Questioner: It seems to me that the primary thing of importance for those on the service to others path is the development of an attitude, which I can only describe as a vibration. This attitude would be developed through meditation, ritual, and a developing appreciation for the creation or creator, which results in a state of mind that can only be expressed by me as an increase in vibration or oneness with all. Could you expand and correct that statement? I am Ra. We shall not correct this statement, but shall expand upon it by suggesting that to those qualities you may add the living day by day and moment by moment, for the true adept lives more and more as it is. Questioner: Thank you. Could you tell me of the number of possible energy transfers between two or more mind-body-spirit complexes? Is it very large, or are there only a few? I am Ra. The number is infinite, for is not each mind-body-spirit complex unique? Questioner: Could you define this statement, energy transfer between two mind-body-spirit complexes? I am Ra. This will be the last full query of this working. This entity still has transferred energy available, but we find rapidly increasing distortions towards pain in the neck, the dorsal area, and the wrists and manual appendages. The physical energy transfer may be done numerous ways. We shall give two examples. Each begins with some sense of the self as creator, or in some way the magical personality being invoked. This may be consciously or unconsciously done. Firstly, that exercise of which we have spoken, called the exercise of fire. This is, though physical energy transfer, not that which is deeply involved in the body complex combinations. Thusly, the transfer is subtle, and each transfer unique in what is offered and what is accepted. At this point, we may note that this is the cause for the infinite array of possible energy transfers. The second energy transfer of which we would speak is the sexual energy transfer. This takes place upon a non-magical level by all those entities which vibrate green ray active. It is possible, as in the case of this instrument, which dedicates itself to the service of the one infinite creator, to further refine this energy transfer. When the other self also dedicates itself in service to the one infinite creator, the transfer is doubled. Then the amount of energy transferred is dependent only upon the amount of polarized sexual energy created and released. There are refinements from this point onward, leading to the realm of the high sexual magic. In the realm of the mental bodies, there are variations of mental energy transferred. This is again dependent upon the knowledge sought and the knowledge offered. The most common mental energy transfer is that of the teacher and the pupil. The amount of energy is dependent upon the quality of this offering upon the part of the teacher as regards the purity of the desire to serve and the quality of information offered, and upon the part of the student, the purity of the desire to learn and the quality of the mind vibratory complex which receives knowledge. Another form of mental energy transfer is that of the listener and the speaker. When the speaker is experiencing mental emotional complex distortions towards anguish, sorrow, or other mental pain, from what we have said before, he may perhaps garner knowledge of the variations possible in this transfer. The spiritual energy transfers are at the heart of all energy transfers, as a knowledge of self and other self as creator is paramount, and this is spiritual work. The varieties of spiritual energy transfer include those things of which we have spoken this day, as we spoke upon the subject of the adept. Are there any brief queries before we leave this working? Questioner: Only if there is anything we can do to improve the comfort of the instrument or the contact, and secondly, is there anything that you wish not published in today's session? I am Ra. We call your attention to two items. Firstly, it is well that the candle, which spirals 10 degrees each working, be never allowed to gutter, as this would cause imbalance in the alignment of the appurtenances in their protective role for this instrument. Secondly, we might suggest attention to the neck area, so that the cushion upon which it is supported be more comfortable. this difficulty has abbreviated many workings. We thank you, my friends, for your conscientiousness and your fastidiousness with regard to these appurtenances, which, as our workings proceed, seems to be increasing. Secondly, your decisions are completely your own as to that material which you may wish published from this working. I am Ra. I leave you glorying in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator. Go forth then, rejoicing in the power and in the peace of the one infinite Creator. Adonai.
All right. Well, greetings in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator. Let us activate our hearts with love and kindness for each other as we discuss the Law of One session that we have just read. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions pertaining to the material or comments?
I think it was great, I could tell you all a little story about, like I suffer from a severe skin disease. And excuse me, it's Shabbat, so I'm like 3-4 wines in, but that's okay. But I suffer from a severe skin disease, and I know what it's like to be an addict. Freaking, I got prescribed pain pills since I was 13, and this July I'm going on 6 months clean off that shit. Just going through detox and then stopping. The usual protocol. I don't know if there's any doctors in here, but
We don't. Keep telling us.
That there's a lot of stuff that they said today that was great, and I feel the green ray, I feel all that, but at the end of the day, none of that changed me. I just went to sleep and woke up one day and it was all over. Fucking, it was 1 week, friggin', and it was over. And then that day I said, bye, wife, bye this, bye that. And I went on with my life. And you know what? That was the best thing I ever did. And I'll put up the Donald Trump sign, but I don't mean it like that.
You should be proud of yourself. That's a huge feat.
It really is. And I mean, if anybody else has struggled with addiction or anything like that, yeah, I have a few drinks, whatever, who cares? But when you struggle with addiction with opiates or, cocaine or, really anything that takes you down the fucking road where you can't control yourself, tonight is Shabbat. I'm going to show you all this. I really want to show you. This is Shabbat. This is a Jewish thing. I mean, I'm sure y'all can see it. I'm going to try to get the whole view. And it's Adonai. And I mean, this is what you guys are praying to or whatever you guys are doing. But let me put up my hat because, I haven't even looked at myself in like, I'd say 4 years, So, if that's what you're praying to and all that shit, like if you're struggling with addiction, you just got, if you want to get to the next point, just let it go. There's nothing to it. Like you just have to let it go. Like when you're ready at that steady point. But that's all I'm gonna say. But this was a huge group. Like I'm looking around the room and there's things in here that are loving it. And that's all that matters to me. So you guys have a good one. Shabbat Shalom.
And all that matters to me is that you felt comfortable enough to share that with us. And we love you. And we're very proud of you.
And the candle's going crazy. It just lifted up like a foot.
Anybody else have something they want to share or talk about that was in the reading today? Or anything else, obviously.
Fred? It looked like you wanted to say something.
Oh, well,
I wanted to ask what everyone thought about the banishing ritual, and that they were talking about the exercise of the fire. I'm not
ask that.
familiar. I'm not familiar with that. You got to understand, I just came across the Law of One material less than a year ago, and I've been crunching on it. It's the most amazing thing I've ever found. I'm, immersed in it in multiple different ways, but there's so much to learn. So if anyone wants to explain, and mass, I know in one of the we're on 73 right now. Let me ask you this. Has anyone in the group heard of a gentleman named Gabriel Lugo? No?
I don't think so.
He's on Spotify, and he does a rundown question by question of the Law of One. And he's actually that's what actually introduced me to the Law of One. That's where I found out about it, is through Spotify. He does kind of just same thing you're doing, Desiree, is, getting having a reading and then discussing it and talking about it and breaking it down bit by bit, but you're including other people live, and that's really awesome. I'm thank you very much for doing all this. You don't know how much I appreciate this.
No.
I look forward to my
Thank you.
Friday for this.
Me too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But if anyone wants to chime in and explain because I realize that a banishing ritual can be anything you design it to be. It's everyone's going to be unique, but like maybe the idea of it is more of what I'm trying to get at. Like, what is the real whole idea of doing a ban? Because I think each one of us has a banishing ritual. I burn incense, and I didn't even realize this was a thing. Before I have this, I sit down and listen to this Zoom call. I burn incense every evening, and I do this. I said I want to have that incense burning because it puts me in the mood and the mindset and everything of doing this. So I understand it, but I don't.
And the exercise of fire.
Yes.
I have to say something. So we're kind of piggybacking on what you were saying. So my son and I started doing this thing where we were my family was going through a really stressful time, and he and I started writing down things on a piece of paper that we, felt like were just bothering us. And I bought this cauldron, which was completely against everything I was ever brought up to believe, whatever. But I bought this cauldron, and we decided that we were gonna write the shit down and then put it in there and burn it. And I found out later that was actually a burning ritual. And I was like, oh my God, I had no idea that we were doing fire magic. So, yeah.
As you can see, I got a little baby cauldron right here. So it's funny that you just mentioned that.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, what you were saying, banishing ritual can be anything, but I think it's with intention.
And I mean, it's good, to do banishing ritual. Like, I can tell you about this because I do it in my other group that I'm pretty much a huge part of. And but it's important when you take the ashes, you put it somewhere where you don't go. And that's all I can tell you. So let's say if you write down, during a full moon,
I may be mistaken.
what you want, what you want to let go, all of that. Just take those ashes and dump them somewhere where you don't go. And guess what? The fire ritual is going to go great. And that's all I can tell you.
I think it's more so really to what you believe for yourself when you're doing it. Anything could be a ritual. And there is no like finite imprint. This is how things need to be done. It's what feels right with you and how you do it as well, and your intent behind it. And Mitch said in here, he believes that the majority of magic discussed in the Law of One material originates from the Order of the Golden Dawn. I discussed it a couple weeks ago, maybe a couple weeks ago.
I've heard of that.
I said a lot about it, I think.
Yeah.
But does anybody have an answer to those questions though? Like Fred's, as far as the exercise of fire and just.
Trev?
Yeah, I'll just jump in very quickly. I'm trying to Google if there is a particular exercise of fire that they're referencing. Bring Forth Forums or bringforth.org is also a website in conjunction. I don't know if they're officially affiliated with LL Research or not, but they usually have in-depth conversations about such things. Yeah. So I pulled up a thread here, and they're just talking about it as a process of ceremony in returning something to light. So burning something. When you burn something, you return it to its light form. And then, yes, make sure you dispose of the any leave behinds in a way that is suitable, because these are going to hold shards and remnants of the things that you're trying to get rid of. So all ceremony and all ritual always comes with a nice cleanup at the end of it in places that are suitable. Yeah, but obviously, if you're disposing of negative energy, don't put it in your garden that you're growing food in, right? Put it somewhere where nature can take care of it, because that's what Gaia does.
Like
I've got some bad carrots 2 for 1. Anybody want them?
You said bad carrots 2 for 1?
Bad carrots, It'll
cost you $10. But the way things are going here in food, just saying. No, nobody. Man, you guys are a tough bunch tonight. What is going on?
let me ask you this. Am I okay? I think come to mind a specific situation involving my ex, where I was told by someone, I guess this would be a banishing ritual. They said, if you are in fear that someone's going to harm you, which, things were very violent at that time, and she was doing very violent things. So she said, get whatever you want, salt, pepper, whatever it is, an herb, and go around your entire house, the perimeter of your house that you want to keep bad energy out of, and with proper intent in your heart, out loud, it expels some statement of saying that you don't want anything bad getting inside of this area. So I did that, and a couple days later, she shows up at my door, and she was drunk late at night. She was screaming and yelling, and I knew it was going to be a big problem. But amazingly, she did not step past where I had sprinkled the pepper.
Cool.
I don't know. That's just my example. Am I correct in that assumption?
Yeah, I'm going to jump in very quickly and say yes, it is, and you can do it with all sorts of things. Salt is a very age-old substance.
I use pepper.
Alchemy. I use salt and pepper. I've got a simple little crystal up here. It's on a piece of alloy that I've just got looped over the top of the door, and so this is just a little charm. That's like this, just hangs over the door like that. Right. Bit of amethyst. You can use whatever stone you want. Then you program it with your intention. So that there holds the intention to say that nobody with any sort of negative intent for anyone within this household can pass underneath that. And I have it sitting above both of the doors to the house. And that tells me very clearly, if somebody doesn't want to come into my house, what they're doing.
That's really smart. I think I might steal your idea.
The is that it's, as Ra talks about all the time, when Don tries to get really specific with the details of this and that, or this before that, or that before this, it's always the intention. So you can have more accurate intention with the more that you're aware of yourself, but you can still just have as an amazingly powerful intention if you have no knowledge of what you're doing, but just have absolute faith and love in the fact that it's going to work. So you could use crystals, you could use bits of paper and draw sigils or your name on it, or the name of your favorite god, or the religious symbol, or whatever you want. It doesn't really matter, but it's your thing that you're putting into it, because this is your in my particular instance I'm talking about here, or whether it's a perimeter around your property, you're defining it for your environment, and that's your estate, your energy state. And that is where you are in your environment, because you don't just stop inside of your body, you permeate into everything around you. So we're all one at the same time. But you're going in this particular area directly around me, I'm taking charge and I'm making sure that it's going to flow beautifully in this particular direction. And so you act as a transformer in that area, in being able to alchemize and shift these things using other frequencies. Like I say it, that we're doing it, but it's actually things working through us because we think that we're doing these things. And that's the illusion that we are separate from everything.
Right.
Nice explanation, Trevor. Thank you. And I was wondering if anyone's familiar with the feng shui 8-sided mirror, where if, let's say, you're in a neighborhood or you have people that are coming to your door that are suspicious, you can get an 8-sided mirror, and with the intent that it reflects back their ill intent towards you. So they don't want to knock on your door because they're feeling themselves. So I've been using that for years, and believe it or not, nobody ever knocks on my door. And I'm in a nice neighborhood, so I don't know if it's overworking itself, but I have a 8-sided mirror pointing at the front door and one in the back of the house. And I've done this for many, many years, and it seems like hardly anyone ever knocks on the door. I mean, I never get like evangelists, the people that go around wanting to spread their version of religion. They never knock on my door. It's kind of fun.
I'm kind of curious if that works for police warrants. I'm gonna have to try that.
Maybe. But there was something in tonight's reading where it was mentioned how I want to call him Yeshua, not Jesus, because Yeshua is more appropriate to his energy. Yeshua would heal people and then tell them to tell no one of that magic. So like in my personal worldview that I've been living for decades now, it seems like I have magical things I do for protection, but I can't tell you what they are because it like lessens its power.
Preliminary hearing.
So I kind of wish I could tell you something. I can kind of give you a rough idea of some things I do. Like I have I visualize a contact with like greater forces that are in charge of things. And I ask for agreements to be made for like a type of permanent protection. So I have established permanent protection in place just merely by visualizing it, asking for it, and believing it, and trusting that it is so, having faith in it. And I truly believe it works.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, isn't that kind of like an intention? And so yes, like an intention, or what am I trying to say? My mind is kind of okay, so like with the protection spells or the crystals. Now, if you are doing that, aren't you kind of like requesting or putting it out there that perhaps they'll come with all that stuff that you're doing to protect yourself, like a backlash?
Yes, you're absolutely onto something that is integrally important about all work that we do, and that is the reason why we do the work. So whenever we're trying to do work to prevent negativity, it's not because we want to prevent negativity. It's because we're cultivating love. the difference between creating and fighting what you want to eliminate.
Okay, and then the fire with the energies, you bring in the from your feet, and the other one comes in and you meet. Now, does that have to do with breathing or just visualization?
I'm going to jump in again. I'm sorry, everybody, but this is perfect because
I
it's
think
also
I'm trying
talked
to.
about.
I understood that he didn't understand. I didn't understand it quite. I didn't understand what they were doing or how they got that.
I'm just going to ask you one more time. Can you say that question again?
The fire breathing, is it related to the fire? What is it? Ritual or
Exercise of fire.
Related to that fire breathing, or
Yep.
if you visualize all the energies moving around?
When Rob was talking about the fact that he's limited to be able to talk about certain things that he does without being asked, this is again a really important lesson for a lot of people under these sorts of things. Unless you're in these types of areas where we're in an environment where we're talking about this, then we kind of don't need to ask somebody if they want to hear about it or wait for them to tell us that they want to hear about it. Even though you've just given me the opportunity to tell you about some of my things that I do about the question that you've asked. So I'm going to tell you about some things that I do that I don't tell other people, but I'm only telling you this because you've actually asked me, right, which is exactly how the whole Tao Te Ching come about, which is where the Lao Tzu was leaving China permanently, goodbye forever. I'm going to go out and die in the woods. And then some chap at the gate said, wait, before you go, I know that you're amazing. Can you please write me a book telling me everything that you can? And then he went, okay, cool. But before that, he didn't say a single thing because a wise man says nothing until he's asked. So with that permission that you've given, I'm going to tell you something that's really cool. And that is where we start to mix and change things for our own benefit, like what Rob was talking about, permanent structures that you can create in your environment, which you might call magic, but they're energetic structures that you can cultivate that then promulgate certain patterns of light energy in that particular environment. So I do Reiki, and the questions about the difference between calling energy up from the feet and calling energy down from above was very interesting for me, because in Reiki, you call energy from above down into your body, and then it sort of comes out of your hands in a way. This is fascinating because it doesn't flow through you. So there's no sapping of your energy. It is completely invigorating and doesn't cost the Reiki practitioner anything in terms of that sort of stuff, if done right. But Reiki, just for clarification, means Rei-ki. Okay, Rei meaning universe, Ki meaning prana, energy, so universal energy. Reiki is not some magic box thing. It's just Chinese for the law of one, or Japanese, or whatever the original scripting was. Because we've got modern languages now, which are different from the original ones back then. But the key is when I'm doing Reiki, I'm usually meant to be following certain practices, which are pretty openly available on the internet, so I don't have any issue telling you generally about them. But there's a master certification, 4 different particular symbols that you've probably seen all over the internet without realizing what they are, and they're Reiki symbols. So before each session, I'm meant to call in each one 3 times, and then even under certain circumstances, I was shown by the guides and everything else that I've got that I'm meant to do it on each. If I'm working in a cube room, like a building, I'm meant to do it on each one of the flat surfaces. So I create a box, an isolated environment. That takes a lot of time. So after doing it a certain amount of time, I became more proficient at it. And so then I started to speed up. And then after speeding up for a little bit, I decided, you know what, I'm going to start doing my own little thing. And I have a hand gesture that I make, which is kind of my interpretation of the collection of energies and the process of it all. But because of the structure that I've been building, it's like using shortcut keys on my keyboard. If I press Alt F4, it closes something, but it still goes through the entire process as if you went through the manual process. It just does it automatically. So we can start doing all these things as well, using our energies and using fire ceremonies and all this sort of stuff, and become really amazing adepts like that. but only through our own growth. Nobody has given me permission to do these things. Nobody has given me the certified course or anything like this. This is just stuff that I've done, that I've gone, shit, am I allowed to do that? And then it's worked. And I've gone, well, the police aren't stopping me, so I guess. So, yeah, I can't remember the exact question, but I hope that I've covered that as well.
Yeah, I still with okay.
Yeah,
with
how to tie it in.
magic. Okay, what does it all do? I mean, what is it supposed to do?
Okay.
What?
When
Of that ritual that they're doing with the fire and the energies meeting in the center of the both and
Oh, the bowls and stuff?
but the energies meeting.
Okay. In the center and swirling around and all this sort of stuff.
Go ahead, Trevor.
You can let's look at somebody, let's use Reiki as a good example again, because they talk very visually about how you're meant to construct the process of doing Reiki. So when I was just looking at the comment then and got distracted. Sorry. So the channel's just dropped very quickly. I'll get it back. When you're thinking about Reiki, you've got level 1, level 2, and master certification. So if you look at a Reiki level 1 practitioner, they're just as effective as a master practitioner, right? They're just as effective. The master practitioner can do different things, but that doesn't mean that they're any better at what they're doing, right? It just means that they've got more detail about what they're doing. So whether your intention is, I call in the energies from above, or whether your intention is, I know exactly that I'm curling the energies around and it's circulating around my IP4 meridian point just right here before it's then going back to my heart chakra, which is then going up to another point right here. Or all of these things don't make any difference to the process whatsoever unless they do for you. That's the key. So whether you want to call the energies in and circulate them around, that's an amazing experience. If you can cultivate it and manage it, it's something you want to do because you feel invigorated from it. But equally, you can feel invigorated by just going, please, Lord, fill me with the light of the one infinite creator. And you'll get that same sensation. When you cultivate more habits that require more detail, you can then get more specific and more detailed about these things. But again, it doesn't mean it's any better. It just means that it's like the difference between a knife and a Swiss Army knife. Swiss Army knife still cuts exactly the same, but it's got a whole bunch of extra shit. Yeah.
Did that answer it for you, Amanda? You're lying. Keep going. What else you got on your mind?
No.
Michelle has her hand raised. Oh, would you like to say something, Michelle?
I've also studied Reiki, gone up to the Karuna level in the past that I was on, but I've also gone to a couple of other energy healing classes from other walks of life, if you will, because there is an Edgar Casey Egyptian energy healing, and the same lady that teaches that has like 3 or 4 other books available on Amazon, Pythagorean healing, and a couple of others. And I think I kind of flipped her mind the last time I saw her at a holistic fair. I walked up to her and I said, I realized when it comes to these energy healing methods, it all boils down to intent. And in actual reality, no symbol is really even necessary, but it is just a tool to help you focus your intent in a certain direction.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. That like the main part is in your mind. And I think that's a great analogy that these rituals are just for focusing your intention to help you believe.
Well, I was talking to somebody today about say like voodoo down in Jamaica, and there's a lot of it in Jamaica, voodoo and stuff like that. Now, if you sincerely believe that somebody's going to put a curse on you, a lot of times either you'll die or whatever. I mean, my daughter goes down there a lot and she sees it. So, the intention is what if you say you don't believe in the curse, somebody's wanting to curse you, does it have that kind of power to affect you? It's a question that.
Hold on. Say that last few things again, because I was.
So if somebody, you believe it or you don't. There's two people. I don't say I didn't, and this other one did. And somebody says, I'm going to put a curse on you, and blah blah blah, and so the one person believes it and gets sick, and the other one doesn't. So is that like
your belief? It makes a difference in it. Exactly. If that's what you mean.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
No. Go ahead, Fred. I'm just kidding.
Go ahead.
I don't, when everybody talks all at once, I don't want to, knock anybody out. But I've listened to a lot of the recordings, and I think with what Amanda's trying to ask about is with the intention of the person that's delivering whatever the curse or the spell or whatever, is it affecting somebody who doesn't believe in it? And I would have to say that it would depend on a lot of different things. One being is free choice being breached by doing what you're doing, because a lot of what you're saying is someone casting a negative spell. You're breaking free will by doing that. It's like taking someone's life. That's breaking free will. Not saying you can't do it, but I'm just saying that's it's harder to do that. So in a situation, depending on the situation, I will give you an example. I hate to bring this up again, but during my shenaniganry of a divorce, a voodoo doll got left on my porch. Did anything bad happen? Well, I can't say it didn't. She set fire to my house. I mean,
Women are crazy. Oh my goodness, we're crazy. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, but did I break a bone or anything? No, I've never, that I didn't. Did it bother me? No, I knew it was somebody messing with me. So I guess you have so many things to weigh to get a real answer for a situation like that you have to know the exact situation and all the things associated with it in the context to even come up with an answer, because everybody's seen movies like Thinner, where you're given this lady curses some guy and he has no control over any of it. And, and it's just, yeah, that's a movie, but it is a thought in someone's mind. So I could imagine in a very specific situation with the energies being correct, where maybe he had a pre-incarnative agreement with someone to allow this to happen. That's something else you have to weigh in there if you think that could be a thing. So that's my weigh in on it.
That's a good thought.
Andre.
So my understanding is that we live in like this consensual reality. And so if someone curses you, the curse will only work if you consent to it. Now, there's multiple ways that the most typical way that a person consents to it is through fear. So by being afraid of the curse, they are taking power away from themselves and giving it to that other person or to the idea of the curse. Like I know of instances where this lady who was spiritual, and then she gave someone a bad look, and then that person thought that he had cursed her, or that she had cursed him, and then like for years apparently he was having various bad things happening, and then he like begged her to take the curse off, and she's like, never cursed you, and so like it's very consensual based. And the kind of way of kind of healing, if you are in this situation, is through forgiveness and love. and forgiving yourself, forgiving that other person, loving yourself and loving that other person, and then also making some positive affirmations, like whatever was the curse, it's like, say the thinner one, like I'm a healthy weight and God loves me, at an appropriate weight. And so I allow that to manifest. All right. I see Robert has his hand up.
Yeah,
and then
thank you. Thank you. Yeah, this has reminded me of a experience I had when I was about 16 years old. So we're talking like 1978. And I was experimenting with the dark forces as they may be. And as a teenager, I had heard of this one girl in town who was spreading rumors about me. And it was kind of disturbing, the things I was hearing. So I, out loud, in nature, I spoke to my version of the Lord of Darkness. And I said to him, if she is truly saying these things about me, give me a sign. Show me something that says she's really doing this. So then I went down to my friend's house about a half mile away to do our normal get wasted in the afternoon, evening type of deal. And here comes that girl pushing her dirt bike down the alley. Both tires blew out at the same time. So I was kind of amazed with that. That was a very powerful statement of some kind.
But Robert, I don't think that was any dark energy doing that. I think that was actually you asking for a sign to protect yourself, and that's actually good energy. You were a young teen. I did almost, when I was a teenager, I got tangled up with someone who was reading the Necromonicon and different dark magic books and that, and I did similar things. I understand. You just were like me. I was confused with what actually is dark and light. It's
right.
It's interesting when once you look back at see the forest, because you're not in the trees anymore, how it is different. It's not exactly what you thought it was.
That's true. But I did have a very scary episode happen after that, where I believe I had contact with what I thought was a true dark entity. And I don't know if I want to tell the story here and now, but it was actual physical contact where I knew it was touching me and I knew I could hear it. And I think when you look at in the face of darkness, it will look back at you. That was, to me, sort of the proof that maybe there was really a darkness, because that was not a pleasant feeling. And it was the Lord's Prayer that pulled me out of that one. So my old Catholic upbringing, saying the Lord's Prayer, and I was afraid, and I've never had a problem since. So, but I've always told people, I think it's still there somewhere. It's always waiting for some opening. I don't know what, but it's never gonna die. Yes,
can I chime in on that, Robert?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. I don't know where you live or anything, but I live in a very old house. My house is going to be 200 years old in 2024. And this ties in with something I think Andre was talking about with the energy. When we emit energy, when we're alive, we're not just, the energy is not just inside of us, it's coming out of us, and we can feel each other's energy. I have a very unique house. It has a very unique history. When this house was built, they were still shooting at Indians, and Indians, shooting at us. So a lot of things happened on this property over the years. It was part of the Underground Railroad going to Canada from the southern states, in Ohio. So it was a very trekked route for a lot of intense things. We estimated through ancestry.com and different venues that between 11 and 15 people died in this house in the time that it's been in existence. Most of them small children. A lot of babies died in the 1800s and early 1900s. You know, a lot of people's children died. I had 12 kids, and you know, only 4 of them lived to adulthood. That happened a lot. So a lot of energy has been expelled throughout the years in my home. This plaster and this wood and this stone and brick is the same that it was when it was built in a lot of places. And from my experience through my being here as a child, all the way through an adult, or through a marriage that failed miserably, and having 4 children of my own, have experienced a wide multitude of, you can call it anything you want. I don't like the H word, haunted, but in my experience, the most activity that was ever pronounced in this house of mine was during the tumultuous periods of my marriage. That being said, that tells me that the physical environment was receiving that energy, having received energy over millennia, or hundreds of years from other people, all of the happiness, the sadness, the pain, the misery, everything. And once it finds something congruent, it reflects it. It's a mirror. So all of the anger and the yelling and screaming opens a can of worms. It makes shit happen. And it's an illusion, but also at the same time, it's that illusion kind of speaking to us in a certain way. I think whenever people experience things like that, they're having problems in a certain area that you yourself are trying to bring attention to. In the times in my life that I've had all kinds of negative things happen in this house, there was, looking back, I needed to be paying attention to certain things to get the balance back. So it's just something to think about as a possibility whenever you do experience something like that, that maybe that's getting my attention. Maybe there's something I need to be looking at, because I've never, and this is another thing, I've never had an experience, what you would call supernatural, in my house that didn't revolve around something negative. It's never been anything positive. It's always been something negative. So that tells me something right there, that something is out of balance and needs attention. But that would be my observation.
Mitch?
So 2 thoughts kind of come to mind on what you were saying, Fred. Rod talks fairly in depth about this law of squaring, and basically it's this idea that if one person has this desire and they seed it out into the universe, it has the strength, right? But if a second person comes along, that doubles it. If a third person comes along, it doubles that. So, and so on and so forth. So each additional person exponentially magnifies that. So it kind of makes sense that with all this negativity put into the house, maybe that's reverberating through. Maybe it does build off of itself, and maybe that's what gives it its power. But on the same thing, I think that's kind of a good thing, because if we don't recognize that we're putting negativity into it, or at least the extent to what we're doing it, we're not going to pull back. We're not going to pull back our own reins. And I think there's kind of a gift in that, okay, well, yes, this is doing me a favor. And no, maybe this is absolutely nothing to fuck with, but I should show it love because it's helped pull me back from this terrible direction that I was heading.
Thank you. That was awesome, Mitch. Thank you.
Yeah. I just also wanted to speak to that. And I think Mitch makes a great point. And it seems that perhaps in your house, there's a lot of residual negative energy, and it's going to need a lot of meditating and chanting and, positive spiritual activity in order to heal it. And if there's any entities that are still kind of stuck in that home, then they also need to be loved and to be shown the way to go to heaven or whatever. Like usually whenever I experience a ghost somewhere, then I recognize them as they are, and then I kind of like open a portal for them, and it's like, you can go to heaven now, it's okay, and well, usually it works. Sometimes they need a little coaxing or some conversation to help them deal with whatever issue, like help them realize that they are deceased, and that they no longer have any other work to do on this earth. And sometimes it's like they want to protect the house or something like this, and you reassure them, oh, it's safe, it's okay, and by having, say, that positive spiritual activity, especially if it's not just you, but like, say, a group of friends or something like that, and then you do these positive activities, then it can help to raise the energies. And if you do find yourself having these negative thoughts and that are supernatural in character, then you can see that, or potentially as, oh, you're having a communication with this entity, and so now you could help this entity. Though in terms of Robert's case, I just wanted to also address that, because I believe that's a separate phenomenon where Robert had he'd been following basically the service to self path at some point in his life, and he found a service to self spiritual mentor entity that was willing to give him the teachings, and now he's just on a different path, but that teacher or whatever is still available should he decide to change his polarity. But as long as he maintains his polarity of the positive service to others path to the end, to his conclusion, then it should be completely fine. And you can always, for those kinds of entities, banishing rituals are quite effective because they are non-local. They're not within the home itself. Okay, all right. Mitch had something to say.
Yeah, just one other thing I wanted to throw out there real quick. Fred, I posted a link to session 95. Ra goes fairly in depth on a cleaning rituals when the whole group was getting ready to move to a new house. I think that's what it was. It may have been they were experiencing issues. Either way, maybe worth giving it a swing. It's not anything really too hard to get into. And again, intent is everything. So as long as your heart's in it, maybe worth trying.
Thank you.
Oh, well, I'm just going to say what I was going to type. So in a sense, though, I wonder if in Robert's case, the entity or whatever is inevitably like there because it was in service to others. Because look at how he responded to it presenting itself and touching him. So then it's like sitting there like, yeah, I need to get your ass back now. But it's like, damn it, you screwed it up because you made him. You made that entity service to others by going and reacting the way that you did, which,
that's really
sucker.
Cool. Very, very cool that you point that out, because yeah, you've got that aspect of having competition. So if we think about service to self teachers, you've got an environment where you can definitely see, like what Robert was describing, a scenario where you have an adept here, like in church, thinking that they're doing something. And of course, I'm going to use a symbol of a male for this example because it accentuates the points that I'm trying to make here. But if you've got the adept as a male and he comes in contact with, say, a demon, using the power of God, the first thing he does is try to fight and overpower that demon. And that is kind of I see a lot of the potential play between negative teachers or service self teachers and their students, where this teacher is like, well, I'm going to show up as a thing for this thing to try to overcome, and I'll let it think that it's overcoming me. So it gains in its power while I'm also holding my deception as a teacher in check, meaning that even though I'm helping this individual, I'm not losing or depolarizing myself because I'm still keeping that hidden, all things hidden that need to be remained hidden. No. So yeah, I can definitely see a lot of really interesting play there like that. But before we finish today, I wanted to shift the subject. But before I do, I'm going to give the floor back to everybody and see if there's anybody else who wanted to comment on the current subject.
Knock them out, Trevor. Knock them out.
I find in the world at the moment, there's a lot of really interesting things that are going on and a lot of deception that is running around about that can easily be categorized as the illusion of separation. One particular chap throughout history was Wilhelm Reich at the turn of the 19th century, was a student of Freud, if I recall, where he was learning a lot, and Freud had some really respected students. Wilhelm Reich then became the demon child of the psychological world and became targeted internationally through the United States government as a conspiracy theorist and somebody who was researching devilish things. There was newspaper articles about him in the 20s and the 30s in America, talking about how he was promulgating sex magic in the United States, and he was only focused about breaking the respect that we have for copulation in private, like the church mentality of what we do in private environments versus the absurd idea that we should all be having sex in public and in front of our kids and all this sort of stuff. So they were using massive fear tactics to separate the public from Wilhelm Reich. And I think the big reason is because he was bang on the mark. He figured out that they had, through psychology, that there was an energy in the human body that was predominantly thought, but it was also through our sexual energy as well. And then he started to ask the questions of, well, if it's in the body, maybe I can detect it out of the body. And he started making and building devices to measure this energy outside of the body. Found it, and then decided through his studies that it was the unified field. So the energy that underlies it all. Now, this energy comes in two forms. He went on to specify one of them he calls pour, and one of them he calls door. Positive orgone energy and door, deadly orgone energy. Deadly just because that's the environment you see. So a desert, being a very deadly environment, has, as in full of dead things, not that it's dangerous. I mean, all environments are dangerous. But the difference between this particular model and a general model of there being a reality and then there being something that doesn't exist is this matches up really well with the law of one, because what Wilhelm Reich is saying through door, deadly orgone energy, is not that deadly orgone energy is the absence of light or that it's some sort of an evil, that there's a negative force. He's saying very loudly and simply that there is no such thing as negativity. Negativity is actually the slowing down or the restriction of positive energy. And in seeing that, he opened up the world to such concepts as there being no such thing as negative or evil, that it just is a perception and an illusion. So this kind of thing matches up really well with 7319, where this is a big thing, so bear with me. General statement which you can collect, which you may see the overall picture of a healer and patient, is that the one who wants to be healed has, because of a blockage in one of the energy centers or more. But we would just consider one particular problem. Because of this energy center blockage, the upward spiraling light that creates one of the 7 bodies has been blocked from the maintenance of that body. And this has resulted in a distortion from the perfection of that body that we call disease or bodily anomaly, which is other than perfect. Now, he's talking very clearly that when something happens inside of the body, it's not because it's gone or that it can't be repaired. It's due to lack of flow, which gets very touchy very quickly when you talk about things like damaged pancreas cells, which is generally what we consider to be diabetes. So if you've got damaged cells and they're dead, Does that mean that you can bring them back to life just by circulating energy through them? And there are a lot of studies out there that say, yes, actually, we can. There's studies and tests done with mice where they try to cultivate mice with diabetes, and rather than straining the breeding lines through stuff like this, they see, Mitch, they damage deliberately the kidneys of mice. They basically kill the pancreas, so that way it can't generate the insulin that it needs in order to be able to cope with sugars and everything else. So it's a simple way of creating diabetes, the effect of diabetes. And what they did was, in this particular study, they took light to send information from one source into the pancreas of these mice, and the pancreas of these mice, which was considered to be absolutely dead, actually came back to life and started functioning perfectly. So we do have scenarios where light has been used to bring what we consider to be physical matter, dead matter, back to life. But that's because, like I was pointing out with Wilhelm Reich, dead matter isn't actually dead. It's very, very slow. So it looks and feels dead to us. But the idea that this plastic is dead and not of this universe is the same as saying that this whole thing is broken and that there's a mistake, which is bankrupt to begin with, because we know that there's no such thing as mistake or anything else. Everything is perfect in its space. This particular question is fantastic because it touches on all of these things. And also, on top of that, the concept of diet in the form of the terrain theory versus the germ model theory, which is the idea that there are external bad guys which are trying to invade our bodies and we need to fight them off, versus the idea that we have amazing bodies and we need to cultivate an environment that needs to look after itself, as opposed to trying to fight external invaders. So in healthcare around the world, in diet, we have this model that is much more akin to the industrial military complex, as opposed to health and healing within our body, which I find a fascinating thing that's just accidentally, seemingly happened. All of a sudden, we've decided that it will approach every area of our life like we do our military. Crap, we're getting invaded. We've got to kill them. And off we go. Actually, like Mitch was pointing out in the comment earlier, these negative things are telling us something. They're making it very clear. Whereas the nice things are going, oh, you might want to think about that, but you can if you want. It's really up to you. The ones that we consider to be the bad ones are basically saying, hey, this is a wall, and you really need to rethink what you're doing right now. Otherwise, you're going to hurt yourself. And we tend to keep going, and then we get hurt, and we go, it wasn't my fault. It was an accident, whatever. And there's all these crazy things that happen. But such a simple question that is based around moving energy, still energy, and how far that extends in our current society, in a lot of confusion around a lot of people around the world at the moment. I find that question to be a big one that I was sitting through while we're listening to it. Anybody else like to jump in on that?
Yeah, just when you mentioned about the war, that just reminded me, because, like, I have all these Ukrainian relatives, and they just have, well, they were very angry individuals to start with. I think it's just like their culture. They're very angry, resentful people. And and then because the government is just like constantly robbing them and everything is corrupt, and then some of the people in that were closer to Russia, they're like, Russia's also corrupt, but it's not as corrupt as Ukraine, and so they split off and joined Russia, and then Ukraine got very upset about it, and and then they started bombing them, and then the war started, and we have this whole narrative where Russia's the bad guy, and yeah, sure, they are in some sense, but I don't think Ukraine is a good guy here. Like right now, they've run out of soldiers, so now they're sending teenagers, boys and girls, to the front line to die. This is just a genocide of Ukrainians. And I think that a much better approach, instead of having all of this war and shooting and more guns and more jets and more tanks, which is just leading to more Ukrainians dying, they can learn how to be nice to their own people. And then their people will not try to separate and join Russia in order to escape from Ukraine. And then they won't have to have a war with Russia to try to force these people to come back to Ukraine that don't want to be part of it, you know? And so, you know, it's just with love and kindness, like, we can completely dissolve the need for having war, you know, by making sure everyone has enough land, say, to grow their own food and firewood, then, you know, and then, like, not steal all of their food and firewood whenever they grow it, which is what's happening now because of the corrupt government, you know. Okay, thanks. That's what I was saying.
Totally. Bang on.
All right. So when you were just talking, and it doesn't even really have to do with what you were just talking about, but the thing just popped in my head. So if there's supposed to be a duality in everything, how can we possibly all be encompassing in this way of thinking, this love and light and everything else, without shouldn't there be a counterpart to that? No, yes, maybe.
Becca?
I forgot I was on mute.
There she is.
I was wondering the same thing. I was like, you know, there's talk of the densities, the different densities, but they're all higher densities. So I wondered, is there a mirror to like lower densities in the same thought? I mean, I don't know if that makes sense. And then if so, I'm trying to wrap my head around the whole all is one. Like, I feel it, but yet I still struggle with connecting it together.
So the analogy I like to use for understanding like higher entities and how they regard us is how we regard our pets, you know, because they are the lower density entities that we're helping to raise out of. And so, say for instance, there's like or maybe 3 ways you could raise your pet, you know, in a service to self way, where, you know, they are a machine that is honed for, say, like, you know, some purpose, like hunting or sniffing out drugs or something like that, you know. Or you could have you know, a neutral way where you're just kind of giving them food and water and ignoring them, and then they just kind of continue being an animal. And then there's the way where you just love them as they are, and then, you know, you care about them and you have a relationship with them in a service to others kind of way, where you're providing for them. And then you know, each of these ways will affect the soul of that pet, and then how it rises up. Okay, Trevor?
Duality, I think, is perfectly represented in the yin and yang. So, and this is the part that a lot of people miss about the yin and yang, is that you've got, duality, black and white, and that within the white there's black, and within the black there's white. Everybody knows that, but people forget that this is contained in a single unit, which is what we're talking about here. So you have white, which is light, and black, which is evil, within the circle, which is light with a capital L, or love with a capital L, whereas the white inside the circle is a lowercase, and the white inside the black is a lowercase. Everything inside of itself is a lowercase, but when you add it all together without eliminating any of it, that's when you get the capital version of it. So whether you're talking about love, you've got love and fear. So lowercase love and lowercase fear, and then you've got capital love. And there are some places in Ra material where Ra talks about, and other sources like Conversations with God, where they talk about the scale beyond this scale. And they mention it, and they just say simply to the individual, don't even bother. You're having trouble enough with your scale. You know, so if you're going to try to contemplate our equilibrium and our polarity and our duality on our scale, first, it might be a good idea to try to wrap your head around those that you've got yourself dealing with right now. But two within one. The only other place I can find a perfect example, sorry, very quickly, is just the brain. It's just the brain, left and right brain. It's still a brain, not two brains, a brain.
Oh, okay.
So I think, Fred, you go after me, but I just want to, because that was my question. One of my questions. My question went, yeah. So it kind of just dawned on me. All right. I think I answered my own question, at least from where I can understand it, is we to be balanced, whatever, or we hold the balance with ourselves. So it's like you have both aspects of each side, and then you're sitting there in the center. So I'm like, oh, duh, Desiree, we hold it within us. So it doesn't have to be like, oh, we have to have bad people here too. It's just, you found you get what I'm saying, I hope. If not, well, I got what I'm saying. And Fred.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say something about the duality, like what you were asking about, Desiree. This was my kind of take on it, because I had a very similar thought. Like, if we're supposed to be balanced, does that mean every good thing I do means somebody has to do something evil to balance it out? But in reality, not. I mean, we're only on one planet right now. There's probably billions of planets in the world, a universe. Balance is universal, so that would have to mean to me two things. Yes, there is going to be that balance. We have the Orion group, that is the one that Law of One people, when they were channeling Ra, that's who they were dealing with as far as a negative entity that was trying to balance the positive energy that was being established in their situation. They were just attempting to balance the situation. So you have an entire group, like we have our Confederation that is positive. There's an entire group that is negative. I'm sure that's all throughout the universe. I can't see us doing anything. Well, I mean, anything is possible, but I can't really see that as, having to worry about balancing anything. They got the balancing covered with their negativity. I don't think we have anything to worry about. We can do as much positive as we can handle. And secondly, we're on Earth, we're very close to the sun. And from my understanding of the explanation, through what I understood from what Ross said, was that the logos is the sun, and that is the closest, that's our sub logos is the sun. So the closer you get to the sub logos, the more positive you are in whatever planetary structure. And look at the Venetians, the Ra, they came from Venus. They're closer to the sun than we are. They didn't even understand bellicosity until they started contacting us. So the further you get out from the sun, you have what's that? Murdoch,
Meldick
that detonate. I mean, they destroyed it. I think that's much more negative than what we ever could imagine. So, and so on. So, Earth also being a hodgepodge. It was said, I remember in some of the raw contact, that Earth has been used as a vessel for other third density rising entities that are in our immediate area, have to come back to Earth to incarnate. There's a lot of reasons for that. A lot of, I think, things happened that made it necessary, but that's a good thing. And also, you still, no matter what, you have to account free choice. It's your free choice. Even being in the most, so with that being said, in third density, even if you were incarnated on Venus, the most positive planet with incarnate beings in our solar system, you still would have at some point had the free choice to be negative service to self. I don't know that it happened. Maybe it didn't, but that's still a possibility. So again, you have 21 different variables to apply to that. But I still, in my understanding of what Ra has explained with the positive and negative, is no matter what in this octave, once you get to about sixth density, you have to come back to positive orientation in order to graduate into the next octave anyway. So
yeah, because you need to activate to move up. So, and the only one left would be the heart.
Yep.
So they'd automatically be positive. Go positive.
Why go through all that struggle just to come back around and have to do all this anyway? You're doing yourself a favor to be positive.
I mean, is it really a struggle for them though? I don't think it's so much a struggle in that viewpoint, in their viewpoint, excuse me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's,
if they want to do it, probably not.
Well, yeah, that's what it would be them wanting to.
It would be a struggle to me or you, maybe, you know, because you would, if I saw myself doing some of the things that I view people as that are more service to self than I would be, I would not like my existence. I would not like waking up in the morning. I would not want to be doing those things that those people are doing. It would make me, I would just hate my life. So, you know what you want to do. So that's what makes you happy. And that's, if that's service to self, then, you feel it. I mean,
Yep. I was like, shit, did my computer freeze? Everybody's like,
yeah.
Well,
I wouldn't mind commenting on that real quick. Fred, that's interesting. You made me realize something when you're talking about the planetary bodies and the distance from the sun, as in physical distance from the logos also. Because Mercury being closer than Venus, we know nothing about incarnate beings on there that I know of. Yeah, so Mars being very warlike and viewed as the god of war from Earth's perspective, but Mars is the last rocky body. Then it gets to be gas planets. So it's a whole different scenario, it seems like to me, because Jupiter we've labeled the king of the planets, and it is the largest. I mean, it actually controls a lot of the gravitational balance of the whole solar system because of its mass. And Saturn has been given that the council of the solar system, whatever, residing in the rings of Saturn, controlling the quarantine of Earth and such like that. And then when you get out to the planet Uranus, science says the planet Uranus emits more radiation than it receives. It's the only planet that does that. And astrologers for centuries have been saying it's the planet of the magician. It's the mysterious. Well, we've only known about it for 240 years, so centuries is a stretch, but it's kind of curious that we've given it the magician kind of notation, and it has like a magical quality to it. So those gas planets, they're much different than these rocky bodies. That they're on a different plane of existence that we can't put on the same spectrum that you were talking about with the rocky planets. The rocky planets, distance seems to make a function. The gas planets, totally different. You were making me realize this. It's hard to describe.
But I think, though, part of that is the fact that we can't see everything.
Yeah.
The example being, 200 years ago, if you said, hey, get an x-ray of your arm, I think your arm's broke, somebody's going to look at you like you're a witch. You're going to end up getting burned at the stake, all that stuff. So they didn't know what x-rays were, radio waves, microwaves, none of that stuff. But what are we going to know and discover? And even we have to build the machinery to detect the things that we don't even know exist yet. And there's a lot of stuff that exists that we don't know about yet. We only see a teeny tiny little sliver of all the visible spectrums. I think that I would hope at some point in our existence, we're going to realize that the sun is actually alive. It's an entity. It's our sub-logos. It is part of the creation just like we are, but it's actually a being, I think, itself. And the planets like Saturn, where we have the council resides, I think that if we actually do like what Andre was talking about, where everybody should just come together and be loving and do, if everyone was service to others, we would be able to advance immensely quickly. We would be able to see, okay, we can see there's entities here. They're nothing like us. They exist in a totally different, they don't even have our physical, our physics that apply to them. So, it's something else for us to say. And it could even develop an entire different leg of science devoted just to studying things like that metaphysics. Metaphysics is kind of going in that direction. But I think that once we start being able to, let our, I don't know what you call it, ego down, we're going to start seeing a lot of things that are alive that we didn't really think were alive before. And that's going to open a whole plethora of new studies towards things. But that's in the future. I don't know anybody specifically that's studying anything like that, but it's interesting to think about.
And when you speak of the sun as being alive, I highly recommend talking to it in meditation.
I talk to it every day. When the sun hits me, I sit there and I literally, I'm like, thank you. I mean, I go through this whole thing. I'm like, I absorb it, everything from it. I mean, if we can believe the earth, I believe the earth is alive. Earth is a being. So if that is, of course the sun is.
Right.
If I'm going to believe that,
I like telling the sun, I like to praise it because it's so huge. I mean, it's good for everyone to
He's like, oh, you a big boy, aren't you?
Yes, you're so big and beautiful, and you're life-giving, and you're just
that's what I say. The same thing.
Everything together, and we appreciate you so much. But I'd like to remind you, we're on this tiny little rock, and all you have to do is throw energy directly at us, and we will be destroyed. So I'm just letting you know we're over here, and we love you.
Yeah, the sun's like, yeah, I know. Say something. Before we close out, Trevor and Andre, I think you had something at one point, but I don't know if you put your hand down. But if you guys want to say your last pieces, and we'll close out for the night.
I was just going to add I can't remember whether it was Quo or Ra, or it could have been one of the other channelers, but at some point during their material, they talk about the beings on the sun, the actual beings living on the surface of the sun, which are basically the amalgamated individuals, which are the individual parts and pieces comprising that logos of our area that has already gone through its unification process to become a stable source for then the promulgation of sub-logos, which is its babies. So it's now in its parenthood stage, and we're now the new sons, or we're now the new parts or the energies of the sun that we're on, as it's building in its energy and going through the process of assimilating all of these bodies. Like at one point he talks about Earth being 7 different bodies at once, all together at once. Once all of these bodies come together, that's when it kind of, its energy starts emitting so much that it might be described to burst into flame in a capacity. Now, any entity that isn't capable of handling that much will, of course, fall apart in that sort of radiative environment, that sort of radiation. But beings that are built for that environment are going to find that nice and cozy, just like home. And so there are beings on the planet of the sun which are there facilitating it, like the cells and bacteria are facilitating our bodies, where the cells and bacteria are facilitating its body like that. There was one particular point where it talks about how the beings on the sun make love all day long, and they send the result of that love to earth, which is the seeds of life or light that we experience as what we call light. So the energy of the sun isn't actually on fire. The energy of the sun being radiated out is actually the collection of the energy of the individuals of the entity, the sun, which are all coincidentally facilitating the energy of the sun coming out of itself through themselves. They're like the proteins around a cell, which matches up perfectly, because when you look at the sun, you see little things coming out of the sun like sun rays, and this is kind of like what a cell looks like, proteins and stuff like that. So there's huge similarities above and below and all this sort of stuff that are going on here. And yes, definitely talk to the sun and the Son of God. It's not just an accident that they're spelt with one letter difference, you know.
Yeah. So yeah, in the LL material, the sun is the sublogoi, which is in charge of basically how things happen in our solar system. It's like 99% of the mass of our solar system. So Robert was right. It's very big. And another thing is that Ra and other social memory complexes of the sixth density inhabit the surface of the sun, as you mentioned, Trevor. And another interesting phenomenon I learned about is that the people in South America, and like basically primitive people, the way that extraterrestrials were able to start contacting them is because they had a religion that included worship of the sun. And so when they asked the sun to help them, that gave permission for the entities that were the service to others entities that were living on the sun to come to Earth and to help the people on Earth. Yep. All right.
So
go ahead.
If nobody else had anything, I was going to go to Robert, and he was going to close us out with his beautiful words. If you're ready, my friend. I think
you have to unmute. You have to unmute.
You're muted.
I'm reaching my
Oh, go ahead. Take your time.
Yeah. But thank you for this opportunity. And thank you, great sublogos, our sun, for shining upon our friends over there in the Southern Hemisphere, Trevor and Cherie, while we're here in the darkness of the North. And we love you, dear son. Please remember we're here. And this group we're with tonight, sharing our thoughts and our feelings. It's so beautiful. May we be able to carry on and absorb and channel so much more love and light into this world, because we are becoming more cohesive as a group. And let's all leave this session tonight in peace and love and light. Thank you very much.
Oh, I love that. Well, and I love all of you. Thank you for joining, and I'll see you next week.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Love and light of the one infinite creator.
Yeah.